Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, we missed the past couple games. We want to explain to the fans before we get into the Kyle Lowry topic. The Raptors lost against the Bucks and had a great win against the Clippers. Unfortunately, Riker and I were extremely busy this weekend, but we're going to be back to your regularly scheduled podcast as of now, especially with the trade deadline coming up. But Riker, it's kind of an up and down weekend for the Raptors.
Yeah, it was an up and down weekend for the Raptors. They had a very torturous game against the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you were watching it was almost all lows. You're thinking, wow, what happened to this Raptors team? There's no way we're going to keep Kawhi Leonard. Just all the negative thoughts you could possibly have. Then there was a really nice comeback, and then the Milwaukee Bucks kind of put them in the dirt then at the end of the game. Then the Clippers matchup, more of a well-rounded win, a commanding win against kind of an up-and-down Clippers team as well. And but with the absence of Kyle Lowry, who's been sort of a big point of, a big issue, I guess, that we've been criticizing a lot as of late. So there's a lot of question marks. Of course, all these rumors now. I'm sure that if you've watched one of the latest Inside the Green Room podcasts with Danny Green, they were talking about what is the pressure like in the Raptors locker room now with, of course, all these rumors swirling around that anybody is tradable really for Anthony Davis and Porzingis being a big issue that came up for a point. And Danny Green said, well, guys are definitely thinking about it, right? It's not something that's necessarily tearing the team apart, but they know that they are probably, or they could be very much in a position where they could be shipped off to a much less desirable team or much less desirable market. So it's interesting how this whole thing is playing out. For us, objectively, it's a very fun time that we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, most definitely. Lots of videos coming. But you mentioned it. Kyle Lowry's been a huge point of discussion. And, we've been talking on the podcast how we've been disappointed with his play. He's at the first 20 games of the season, he was looking like he was an MVP caliber player. He was playing peak Kyle Lowry basketball, scoring in the paint from the three-point line and facilitating the Toronto Raptors offense at just a magnificent level. He was leading the league in assists for almost a couple months there. He was taking charges left, right, and center. When Kyle Lowry's doing all those sorts of things, he's a deserved all-star. He made the all-star team this year, and that's in large part due to that first couple month stretch, because Kyle Lowry was absolutely
I'd still give
phenomenal.
It to Pascal Siakam, though.
I think Pascal deserved it, and obviously I was on that bandwagon before. There might be some injury reserve, so I might not have lost the bet just yet.
I think you're eating that spicy pepper there, mister.
No, I'm telling you, Kyle Lowry might not be able to play. We'll talk about that a bit more in the All-Star game. They might have to replace him with Spicy P. But regardless, Kyle Lowry, he had that phenomenal start to the season, and he went out for a good 2-3 week stretch with this back injury. He had steroid injections in his back. Really, really just had this chronic issue. We didn't know how long he'd be out for, and then surprisingly, he came back when he did. He didn't look too good the first few games back. He looked a bit more healthy as of late, but still really didn't find his touch, didn't find his stroke. Still facilitate the offense pretty well, but wasn't nearly the player he was at the beginning of the season. And now it's not looking good for Kyle Lowry on the injury side. He's been out. You mentioned it against the Bucks game. He doesn't look like there's a clear timetable for his return. It's a lot to take in with Kyle Lowry, but how do you see the Raptors going forward with Kyle Lowry injured?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a big point that's been raised every season, basically, it seems, whether it be the playoff woes or regular season injuries. Kyle Lowry, being the guy that he is, his importance on the Toronto Raptors, of course he's going to be a point that we're going to have to talk about, and he's been criticized a lot as of late, and a lot of fans are frustrated that we're criticizing him, saying, if we're either sticking to him too highly when he's in a bit of a slump, and right, and they're saying, oh god, he's the worst player ever, he needs to be dealt away, or when we're harshly criticizing him, they're saying, are you serious? He's been so terrific for this team for however long, and now because he's in a slump, so it's really a back and forth matter. But the reason that I'm critical of him this season, right, there's a couple of points. One, and the biggest reason, is that this is the Raptors' playoff push, right? This year is the year because we're not sure of Kawhi Leonard whether he'll come back. That's been iterated in as many ways as possible, right?
And LeBron's gone.
And LeBron is gone. So we need the guy who's considered the number 2 guy on this team to be the number 2 guy. That's just, and if he's not performing, regardless of what the reason is, it's disappointing at best, but it's a reason for concern, and that's what that is right now to me, and that's the reason I've been very critical of him, and I'm willing to ship him away, is because this is the season that we need the highest performance, and that's not what's getting delivered right now. Another reason, and a thing that I'm not a believer of, and take it as you may, is that older or aged players, I don't believe that they're often able to return from injuries, especially chronic ones, and be the player that they were, and even close to that. And he's come back, and he's been fine on assisting the ball, but he hasn't been the same shooting, and I until I see it, I'm not going to believe that he's going to be able to recover to the Steve Nash-esque form at the beginning of the season that, as you said, allowed him get into this into the All-Star game. So I'm hoping that he can turn around, but I'm rather wishing that he can be sent away or some other solution can be dealt with, whether it's through trades or something that can be shaken up within the lineup, that we can get a more consistent guy as our starter, because his numbers right now, they're secondary unit numbers.
That's fair, especially on his scoring ability has fallen off a map with his scoring consistency has fallen off a map with this injury, and you mentioned it. It's a chronic injury, which is extremely worrisome as a Raptors fan. And when he was out there, he looked pretty okay for a couple games there, but initially when he came back, he looked like a broken player out there. He looked like a guy that was kind of hobbling around the court, really didn't look healthy. He didn't look healthy, and you mentioned it. Kyle Lowry's 32 years old, and it's going to be tough for him to come back from this injury. So, we were mentioning on a pod, why is he even playing? We want him 100% healthy for the playoffs. We want him playing at that beginning of the season level, because he's shown he's still, his skills haven't necessarily fallen off a map. He's just hurt. He's out there not healthy. And when a player of that age is not healthy, they can't play at the highest level they can be, especially a guy like Kyle Lowry who throws himself around a lot. A lot of his offense is initiated by going in the paint and finishing and hitting those fadeaways. And Kyle Lowry's hurt, and it's been something that's frustrated myself watching him play, is he's shooting way too many threes. His 3-point shot isn't going in, but he'll settle for 7 or 8 threes.
It's a D-Rose situation, right? After his multiple big injuries, you could see how tentative he was, because his game is that crazy acrobatic finishes, and he had to dial that back because of fear of injury and just his ability to be as explosive, right? I'm seeing the same thing in Kyle Lowry. He's still taking charges, right? But you're just not seeing the tenacity that he had prior to his injury, but he's been injury riddled throughout the last couple of seasons, so it makes sense.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's the thing about the Toronto Raptors. You mentioned you would like to see maybe a trade happen or a move that gets us a more consistent starting point guard. See, that's the issue, that I don't think trading Kyle Lowry is the solution right now, because Kyle Lowry's trade value is at a lowest of the low just because of his age and his injuries. He's still a very capable player when he's healthy, but a guy, people aren't going to trust his health. Even the Sacramento, I guess the Kings front office has been decent. The New York Knicks front office wouldn't even be high on Kyle Lowry right now because of his health. So I don't think we'll be able to fleece anyone or get someone the same caliber back. And you mentioned it. The Raptors are going all in on this season, and if we're going to be trading Kyle Lowry, we're going to be trading for a player that's objectively less skilled. Maybe more of a safer bet with the injury situation, but I don't think we're going to get a player of the same caliber of Kyle Lowry. And Kawhi Leonard has been vocal. He's been saying how impressed he has been with Kyle Lowry throughout the season, even when he's been at this low, just for how he facilitates the offense. So in my opinion, you mentioned the course of action that you take would be to make a move before the deadline or try and find a replacement starter. But I think we should just sit Kyle Lowry. Sit him for a month. These chronic injuries, make sure he's working on his body. Make sure, don't make him sit home and do nothing, right? Get him to work out. Make sure he's 100% healthy the same way he came into the season. Give him a month or so before the playoffs to fully recover. Maybe get Fred into a groove where he, because he's had an up and down season, but he's been very solid as a starter for the Toronto Raptors. I think Fred can man the starting position for the regular season, and then hope to God that Kyle Lowry's at full form going into the playoffs, because I think that's our best chance to come out of the East and give a run to the Golden State Warriors.
No, absolutely. I mean, what I'm saying is I agree with you. I don't think that there's the ability there to ship Kyle Lowry off. Yeah. He has no value right now. You would be a foolish, even like you said, even the New York Knicks and others. Of course, it is what they did was
they
not.
They did give away Porzingis for nothing.
They gave away Porzingis for nothing, but it was a cap space move, and through some research, but they've done some other questionable things, and their ability to manage that team is definitely very suspicious. So we'll just leave it at that. But you're right, Kyle Lowry's not getting moved anywhere. That's wishful thinking to the absolute extreme. Right? That's a fantasy novel there to say that you're getting rid of Kyle Lowry for somebody who actually has value.
Because I want to mention, I don't want to get rid of Kyle Lowry. I don't think he's untradeable. I'm sure a team would take him, but to get something of equal value back, I think that's a dream.
They're making their playoff push, so of course value needs to be the thing that you're talking about right now. I think it's more reasonable to get somebody else, whether or not you can put together a couple of the second tier guys for maybe one heftier piece, not at the quality or the caliber of a starting point guard somewhere else around the league. But or put everybody together, put all of your pieces into the one basket and try to get Anthony Davis. And we'll make a full-length podcast on why we think it's
the updates.
Time to go for him, because Milwaukee is apparently in the number one forerunner now to land Anthony Davis. So, this is the Raptors' time here. But just a smaller name player, somebody like a Jeremy Lin. Obviously not Jeremy Lin, and that's not who we're going to want to put in our starting lineup, but somebody as that. I will be extremely disappointed with as of what's been the output of the Toronto Raptors as of late. Right? Again, critical of Toronto Raptors, even though they are winning games, but because I want to see something that resembles a team that can probably win in the playoffs and get to the championship, right? Because the Houston Rockets, they lose games, but you still think, wow, this team can probably make a push. The OKC, they've been on this, I think, a 7-game win streak, but even when they're losing, you're like, this is a team that could contend with the Golden State Warriors, right? The Boston Celtics, everybody still has them probably above the Raptors in the power rankings, even though the record is worse. So I want to see a team that resembles a team that can push deep into the playoffs, and that the way that they've been playing currently doesn't give me the hope, unfortunately, or the confidence that they can do that. And therefore, I want to see something, right? I want to see some sort of move before trade deadline on Thursday.
Most definitely. And one thing, we're going to be talking about all possible trades. You guys are sending in some trades. I've been inconsistent on Instagram DMs, but a few of you have been sending those messages. I'm trying to respond as quick as possible, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, I've been myself super busy the weekend, and Rikers has been as well. So we're gonna be responding to all those trades. So send them to us, and we'll talk about your guys' moves. But right, one thing that's pretty interesting and who's been rumored around the Toronto Raptors is Kyle Lowry. Probably, in my opinion, I think we should rest him for the playoffs. Obviously bring him back before, let him get in his comfort zone and all that. But when you have a chronic injury with an older player, don't waste his games. Don't waste his health in games in January, February, March. Right? We need that guy for April, May, June, those sorts of games. But I think Fred VanVleet, especially when he knows night in, night out, he'll be the starter for a long stretch of time, can be capable of manning a starting position, maybe not on a championship caliber team yet, but certainly for a solid team in the Eastern Conference. And then, we need some more guard depth. There's a player, Wesley Matthews, who could be a guy that could be brought into the mix. Solid 3-and-D guy. Apparently he's going to be bought out by the New York Knicks at some point. That's the consensus around the NBA media, that the Knicks are probably going to buy him out. Would you be interested in bringing in Wesley Matthews, a guy that we tried to bring in a couple years back when we got DeMarre Carroll that offseason, but he'd be a solid player. A bit inconsistent from the three-point line, but definitely a solid 3-and-D guy to come off the bench.
Yeah, well, in the game against Dallas, that the Raptors almost didn't come away with the win. He actually was one of the better players of the game. He's been, a career guy. He's known his role. He's not a guy that would demand a lot of time, and you're right, he can bring certain aspects of the game that has been missing. Hopefully he can be a 3 guy, but we can never put that label on players because they love to underperform when that's that's what's desired from them. So he's a guy, I think, if the price is right, then it would be maybe a good way to add a little spark into the bench unit.
Yeah, most definitely, because it's looking like he'll be bought out by the Knicks, so we have that roster spot, maybe a good fill for Wesley Matthews. The Toronto Raptors, they have a lot of. It's an interesting stretch now this week for the Raptors to see what they do. As you mentioned it, the team, everybody's on high alert about these big names being put up for trade, and these, maybe not as big of guys, but there's a lot of people on the trade market right now. I think it's going to be a wild week for the Toronto Raptors. We'll keep you up to date on it. We'll let you know of everything that's happening, going on. Stay tuned to the Raptors Digest. Any last words, Ryker?
Yeah, So we'll put into the link to this description. This tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll have with me. We'll talk trades. All the information will be in the links to sign-up sheets, and basically first come, first serve. I'll take about 5 to 6 callers tomorrow evening if you're interested in it. If you've listened this far, well, I'm guessing the people that would want to phone in have definitely listened this far. So yeah, go down there. And if you're free, then we'll sound off and get on the podcast, and we'll talk some trades, because I know that it's been kind of crazy at the response, and everybody kind of wants a different thing. Some people are saying, away with Anthony Davis, we don't want that on the team, and some people are saying like we would be crazy not to go for him. So follow up on that, and tomorrow I'd be excited to hear from you guys. Otherwise, Ben, we got some cool stuff coming up, and we're back on the podcast grind now.
Most definitely. It's an exciting time. Anyways, you're the best for making this far. As Ryker mentioned, check out the link in the description. Sign up for that call. We know we mentioned to have it Sunday, but unfortunately it was just too hectic for us to do. The logistics didn't work. But Tuesday night, happening. Call into Ryker. Have a good chat. Anyways, check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff.
Cheers.
You guys are the best.
Cheers.